Moscow's Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I'm a former Navy helicopter pilot. I served for almost 10 years. And so at every duty station, whether it was in Norfolk or in Manama, Bahrain, and at every overseas place I was and I would enter as a military member, we would receive a security brief. And that security brief, we would be told to look for things that were out of place. Look for things that were odd and look at them with an eye towards security. And so if somebody was loitering around my helicopter on the tarmac, that would be questionable to me, for example. And so I arrived in the Capitol the week of the 6th, and I was very concerned about the violent crowds, the violent extremist groups that were coming to the Capitol for the mobs on the 6th, called there by the president. And I told my staff not to come in that day, to work remotely, not to be anywhere near the Hill. And I was really shocked when I got into the House office building and saw these groups inside. And what was so shocking is as you mentioned, visitors aren't allowed in the Capitol complex. Since March, since the start of COVID, that has been shut down. All tours are shut down. That was true in the last Congress and was reiterated on January 3rd in the new Congress that there would be no tours allowed, even tours given by members. And so the only reason you'd have a visitor is on official business. So to see these groups around the Capitol complex was really striking. And given what we know the next day of what happened, it's really shocking that those ties were made. And it was so odd to see them that my chief of staff called the sergeant at arms to say, what is going on? And he reiterated the only way these people could have gotten into the Capitol complex was with a member or that member's staff. And we now know that those violent groups that attacked the Capitol complex had inside knowledge of the Capitol grounds.
Do you know which members of Congress or which congressional staff members allowed these groups into the Capitol and were showing them around? I know that you haven't talked publicly about that yet, but do you know that information? Have you conveyed that information to, for example, the House Sergeant at Arms?
So, Rachel, as you showed, we have asked, and other members, over 30 other members have asked for an investigation. That investigation has started and is now ongoing. So I'm not talking about exactly the people that I saw, but I will be conveying that to them. However, make no mistake, the only way that these people, these groups, could have gotten into the complex is if another member of Congress or their staff walked them in. And that was reiterated by the Sergeant at Arms on January 5th.
It is so disturbing to think about members of Congress facilitating the breaching of the Capitol building, facilitating an attack not just on the Capitol building, but on Congress. The attack was obviously timed to coincide with a joint session of Congress. Every member of House, every member of the Senate there at once doing the people's business, carrying out a constitutional responsibility. That attack was meant to menace the 400 some odd of you who hold this job. It's very disturbing to think that one of your colleagues could have facilitated it and helped the mob do what they did. If that possibility is borne out by the investigation that you're asking for, what's the right remedy? What's the right punishment for that?
Rachel, I was in the chamber as the violent mobs were attacking. I was flat on the ground as other members were calling loved ones because they thought that might be the last phone call they made. To imagine that colleagues of mine could have aided and abetted this is incredibly offensive, and there's simply no way that they can be allowed to continue to serve in Congress. To attack other members of Congress, to incite an attack on other members of Congress, and to do so as we're doing our constitutional duty to certify the election, something that every member of Congress should have really held sacred, an oath they took to the Constitution to perform that. They will have to be kicked out of Congress if that is found to be true.
Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, Democrat of New Jersey, U.S. Navy veteran. Thank you for your service both in Congress and in the military, and thanks for your time this evening.
Well, it's always an honor to serve, and thanks so much for having me, Rachel.
It is Thursday, the 14th of January of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya. A little bit of spice in your life. Oh, wow. Well, we had an impeachment last night, just like the one before, except this one went a lot better. It was faster, too. Oh, I know the usual suspects were up there saying it was all our fault. And if we carry on like this, we're going to have even more violence. Sounded like a threat. Well, you don't negotiate with terrorists, right? You tell them what you want and then slap them down when they don't follow your orders. Isn't that what you're supposed to do with terrorists? Boy, I don't know. Everything's topsy-turvy now. Looks like the Capitol Police. Oh, my God. Now, I was somewhat aware of some of their problems over the years, but I didn't realize how endemic and systemic the problem is. They've been sued for racial discrimination by black police officers for, well, about 20 years or more now. And nothing comes of it because, as a black police officer said, well, Congress isn't doing their job. I wish they'd stop saying Congress, and I wish they'd start saying the Republicans. Okay, they're the ones that keep anything from happening. All right? God, I hate that. But anyway, black police officers never know who has their back. And that's not good. Especially when you have like this closed society of cops who believe that they're, I don't know, above all. And now they have a hierarchy within, outside of the military command structure that, they built in. Time to crack some heads, and I mean get the place scrubbed. Every level of our government, and I would probably say every level of our society needs to be scrubbed of this scourge. No more Nazis in America, okay? That's what we have to look at them as. They're Nazis. There's no getting around it. Call them a Nazi and find out how fast they come back with Antifa, like that's supposed to be something bad. If you think anti-fascism is bad, you're a fascist. Please. It's not Antifa that built Gallows out there in the Capitol. All right. I know they keep saying that Antifa burned our cities down last summer. Prove to me one city was burned down. One. Geez, they had like garbage can fires illuminating against a tree canopy, and they call that burning down a city. Because black people were doing it. White Capitol police officers were sued for calling their fellow white officers fogs. What is that? Friends of gangsters. Friends of gangsters? Yeah. Ones who had no problem patrolling with black officers. Black officers were called the N-word. If they were a black woman, they were called the N and C word, right to their face, as if there was nothing wrong with it. The janitorial staff, which is predominantly, mostly, well, I guess you would say all black. Predominantly, mostly, it's all black. Says that they had really cleaning up after the racist white supremacist mob was no different than cleaning up the white supremacists they have to clean up after now, which are the Republicans. Yeah, apparently no Democratic member treats them with such disdain and racism, but the GOP members do. So stop saying it's Congress that's the problem. It's the GOP that is the problem. They are now an insurgent party. 10. Oh, I know it's historical. Never before has any number that great from the opposing party, the party whose president is being impeached. Never before has that great number ever happened. I don't care. 197 decided to be part of the sedition caucus. They are now the insurgency. Once you've had the insurrection, then you need people on the inside. You need electeds, and that means it is then an insurgency. I was calling it an insurgency pretty quick, like within hours of the insurrection, because it sure looked like there was some, I don't know, inside work going on, and we're going to get involved with that. After World War II, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, it took only a matter of months to find some admiral and have his head roll over it. They had their investigation, a commission, and it happened pretty damn quick. The 9/11 Commission, though lots of it has still not been released for public consumption, did hold some people to account, named problems, didn't really attend to them, except, I don't know, let's make DHS. Yeah, okay. Let's build something on the Nazi model. What could go wrong? And, yeah, so, you know, I mean, it we'll just, for argumentative purposes, just say it was fairly thorough. We're still going through Benghazi investigations as we speak here this morning. Even though that was pretty much invented out of whole cloth on why that had to be investigated. But, on the other hand, you can see the fear and the violence that occurs when Capitol buildings, embassies, consulates, etc. are overrun by a mob. It doesn't matter what side you're on. If some Republican staffer stepped out of a door, they would have zip-tied them, put a bag over their head, and probably hung them. If they didn't get beat to death first, and then hung, they had the gallows all erected. And they had inside out. And we're going to get into that a little bit more, even after at the top there. With Mikey Sherrill. She wasn't the only one. You know, there is is it I don't know what it's called, a letter, I guess, to investigate. I don't think it's a bill. Maybe it is. Regardless, let's start getting these 9/11 type commissions up and going right now. The insurgency continues. We have congressional electeds who refuse to follow congressional rules. As if they're going to get away with it. 197 of the insurgency caucus. You know, back in the 50s, if you had a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody who might be a commie, you were out of a job. And I'm not talking about in government. I mean in life. I think we need to create a stink around these people that no one wants to be around until they clean up their act. At least pretend you're a member of our society, of our nation. Pretend, at least. And we want our flag back. No more chanting USA while committing fascist acts. Sounds like Sieg Heil, if you ask me, the way you guys, not you out there, I'm talking rhetorically to, the GOP and their fellow travelers. When they chant USA, it sure sounds like Sieg Heil. I want that USA back. Anybody flying a Trump flag is not allowed to have an American flag until you prove otherwise. Maybe we'll have to have some loyalty oaths, a few loyalty tests. Maybe we need to, hook you up to an e-meter to see if you're clear to be a functional member in our society. I don't know. We could make that one up. Worked for L. Ron Hubbard, and look where he's at. Well, I know you could say he's dead, but, he built an empire of what? Science fiction? Wow. Seemed to work for him. Okay. All right. Let's get into the actual curated part of the show, because I could just go on. And I need some order in my life, too. All right? Enough of this chaos. I have to confess that I had a momentary lapse, right? When it was, clear that we had won the election. Joe and Kamala are going to be our president and vice president. Momentary lapse that I felt happy. I felt like, God, our nightmare is over. But then you just have to wait. You have to get to January 20th. Maybe January 21st, because we still don't know what's going to happen on the 20th. So, yeah. Instead of just, succumbing to the feeling of dread that I've had the whole time, I had just this momentary lapse, like optimism, damn it. Should, just keep expecting the dread, because they're bringing it. And let's hope to God that the National Guard, there's 15,000 National Guardsmen? I was hoping they would be vetted. Because I'm seeing a lot of pictures of those National Guards troops with the thin blue line on their packs. I do not want a Sadat happening on Inauguration Day. I don't want some military types lining up in formation in front of the dais and firing like they did on Sadat. And they used some artillery too, actually. Assholes. Vet these people. I want a scrubbing. Anybody in the National Guard. Oh, is the thin blue line part of the group non grata? Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I mean, who they associate with. Back in the day, like I said, if you had a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend who might be a commie, you were out of a job. Not even 6 degrees. Well, maybe 7. It didn't matter. They made it so that it was tough, all right? How about a loyalty oath to the Constitution of the United States of America? Do we have to go back to that? I know people will say, well, it's going to be just like the 50s. No, it's not. We're not going to run roughshod and just hit willy-nilly, arbitrarily entrap everybody. That's what they keep saying we're going to do. No, that's what they do. We'll vet these people properly, and if they're Americans, then they can be part of America. If they're not, then I think they need some, first you have to educate them before you can re-educate them. Well, then, we'll get to that point. You want to be a functional member of society in the United States of America? Prove it. been telling us that we have to all the time, and you can't even spell the questions on the test. How dare you? Maybe we need to start by teaching American civics starting in grade school again. You know, that used to be normal. All right. Well, I said I was going to get on to the curated part of the show. Well, let me tell you what it is. Okay, beginning here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, New York City will terminate business contracts with Trump after last week's insurrection. And he's suing them because, you know, a contract's a contract. Damn right a contract's a contract. There's a moral clause and a few other issues there, Donnie. The Trump administration cravenly slashed millions of acres of protected habitat for the spotted owl. Okay. Got to kick everything on the way out, break everything on the way out, salt the earth on the way out. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants fines of up to $10,000 for lawmakers who refuse to be screened for firearms and pipe bombs. I mean, what's in their bags? Pipe bombs. They're bringing pipe bombs. Better check them. $10,000 if they don't open up their bag. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the South Korean Supreme Court upheld the 20-year prison term for conservative icon and former president Park Geun-hye. And poisoned Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny plans to go home to Russia next weekend, despite threats to poison him once again behind bars. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Homepage at netrootsradio.com. Off to the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, on the other side there, to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we will stretch those dollars as we have for almost 10 years now. And then we pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resistance broadcasting since we have to do it. So many fascists out there. And that's our civic duty as the founders originally intended, so many years ago, more than 10. Okay, just so you know. And your generosity has allowed us to do that. And I hate to tell you this, but we still need help because that's the nature of things. Oh, boy. You know, you think after 10 years we could have built an empire. Nah, I guess we're still part of the resistance. What a long war we have to go through now. How dare they? All right. From tea parties to what? What was that? What do they call that on January 6th? Okay. All right. But thank you for your generosity, and thank you for generosity in the future. All right. Truly. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of me because, well, I am me, and who am I? I'm at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I link that up on Twitter, and you can find it there at Justice Putnam. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and you can pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Deezer! It's on Deezer. Wait, whoa, you know what? What if Trump finds out about Deezer? What will happen then? Yeah, I guess they'll have to kick them out of business too. He breaks everything he touches. Which reminds me, let's tuck in to this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, talking about everything he touches. You know, New York was so happy to get rid of him. Oh, you're moving to Mar-a-Lago? Good. Oh, boy. But, Karen Matthews, is that right? Yes, Karen Matthews of the Associated Press brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. New York City will terminate business contracts with Donald Trump after last week's insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Mayor Bill de Blasio announced, I am here to announce that the city of New York is severing all contracts with the Trump Organization, de Blasio said in an interview with MSNBC. De Blasio said the Trump Organization earns about $17 million a year in profits from its contracts to run 2 ice skating rinks and a carousel in Central Park, as well as a golf course in the Bronx. Oh, wow. The city can legally terminate a contract if the leadership of a company is engaged in criminal activity, the mayor said. Now, I guess his defense would be an insurrection isn't criminal, it's political. Really? We'll see about that. Inciting an insurrection, let's be very clear. Let's say the words again. Inciting an insurrection against the United States government clearly constitutes criminal activity. But that's not what mobsters say. Let's be clear. Okay, a Trump Organization spokesperson said the city can't cancel the contracts. The city of New York has no legal right to end our contracts, and if they elect to proceed, they will owe the Trump Organization over $30 million in dollars. Wow, they always like to double down, don't they? There is nothing more than political discrimination, an attempt to infringe on the First Amendment, and we plan to fight vigorously. See, I told you. Insurrection is just a political thing. It's their free speech rights to, well, murder policemen, plan to abduct and then execute elected members of our government. It's all free speech. And anybody who says anything about it as being, like criminal, you're just being political. Wow. That's how mobster fascists think. The move to end business contracts in the city he formerly called home is the latest example of how the January 6th breach by violent Trump supporters is affecting the Republican president's business interests. The PGA of America voted on Sunday to take the PGA Championship away from his New Jersey golf course next year, a move that came after social media platforms disabled Trump's accounts and Shopify took down online stores affiliated with him. De Blasio had said earlier that the city was examining its legal options to end the Trump contracts. He said yesterday, Wednesday, that city lawyers determined that if Trump sues over the move, the city would win. Trump incited a mob to attack the Capitol, de Blasio said, adding, the lawyers looked at it, and it was just as clear as a bell that's grounds for severing these contracts, and we're moving to do that right away. Well, moral clauses in contracts are something now, aren't they? Yes, they are. Of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Trump administration said it would slash millions of acres of protected habitat designated for the imperiled northern spotted owl in Oregon, Washington State, and Northern California, much of it in prime timber locations in Oregon's coastal ranges. Environmentalists immediately decried the move and accused the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under Trump of taking a parting shot at protections designed to help restore the species in favor of the timber industry. The tiny owl is listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act and was rejected for an upgrade to endangered status last year by the federal agency despite losing nearly 4% of its population annually. This revision guts protected habitat for the northern spotted owl by more than a third. It is Trump's latest parting gift to the timber industry and another blow to the species that needs all the protections it can get to fully recover, said Noah Greenwald, Endangered Species Director for the Center for Biological Diversity. Timber groups applauded the decision, of course they do, which won't take effect for 60 days. More thinning and management of protected forests is necessary to prevent wildfires, which devastated about 300 acres of spotted owl habitat last fall, said Travis Joseph, president of the American Forest Resources Council. Loss of the ability to log in areas protected for the spotted owl has devastated rural communities, he said. 3.4 million acres removed from federal protections Wednesday includes all of Oregon's so-called ONC lands, which are big timber territory. The more than 2 million acres are spread in a checkerboard pattern over 18 counties in western Oregon. The Fish and Wildlife Service agreed in a settlement with the timber industry to reevaluate the spotted owl's protected territory following a 2018 U.S. Supreme Court decision involving a different federally protected species. The Trump administration has moved to roll back protections for waterways and wetlands, narrow protections for wildlife facing extinction, and open more public land to oil and gas drilling because they are salting the earth, in this reporter's opinion. Some overworked anonymous intern at Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said yesterday, Wednesday, she wants fines of up to $10,000 for lawmakers who refuse to be screened for firearms, and I would also include pipe bombs, at entrances to the House of Representatives following the January 6th violent attack on the Capitol by pro-Trump rioters. Seditious? Where's seditious in there? Well, metal detectors were erected at entrances to the House floor on Tuesday evening as members were debating whether Trump should be removed from office over the assault on the Capitol, which sent lawmakers into hiding and left 5 people dead. Several Republicans were seen going around the detectors or loudly complaining about their use to the Capitol Police. Pelosi announced yesterday, Wednesday, that when the Democratic majority House returns to session on January 21st, members will vote on a rule change mandating fines for members who refuse to follow the protocols, $5,000 for the first offense and $10,000 for the second, to be deducted from lawmakers' salaries. Pelosi said, many House Republicans have disrespected the Capitol Police by verbally abusing them and refusing to adhere to basic precautions to keep members of our congressional community, including the Capitol Police, safe. It is tragic that this step is necessary, but the chamber of the people's house must and will be safe, she said. Newly elected Representative Lauren Boebert, who we all refer to here at Netroots Radio as Squeaky Boebert, a Republican who has vowed to carry her Glock pistol when she is at work in the Capitol, was seen setting off the metal detector alarm on Tuesday evening and then refusing to allow her bag to be searched before entering the chamber. What was in it? Pipe bombs? We don't know. She wouldn't let anyone look. Boebert later tweeted her protest against the rules. I am legally permitted to carry my firearm in Washington, D.C. and within the Capitol complex, she wrote. Metal detectors outside of the House would not have stopped the violence we saw last week. It's just another political stunt by Speaker Pelosi, she said. Every kid in school has to go through a metal detector. You got to go through a metal detector at the airport. If you're going to talk about 1776 on the day of the insurrection, if you're going to tweet from inside giving tactical info to the insurrectionists coming in to kill people, then I think that maybe you should follow a few rules before you get carted away. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman.
And they'll basically crush or pop the head off of any worker who tries to attack them.
If you're a honeybee, a hornet attack could be the last thing you ever experience. It's a gory, violent process, and honeybees have had to adapt to stay alive. You've probably heard of those murder hornets that recently turned up in North America. This is not a story about those. This research takes us east to meet their cousins. Wellesley College biologist Heather Madela went to Vietnam to understand how Asian honeybees defend themselves from the hornets there.
And in Vietnam, that's the giant hornet, Vespa.
Typically, when a hornet invades an Asian honeybee hive, hundreds of bees surround the intruder and create what's called a heat ball. With the hornet caught in the center, the heat goes up and the oxygen goes down. The bees literally cook and choke the hornet to death. But Vespa has figured out a way to avoid this trap.
Giant hornets will hunt honeybees on their own and grab them one by one. But what is really lethal to honeybees is when they flip into a multiple hornet attack strategy. And when they do this, they essentially want to kill all the adult defenders so that the colony is no longer protected.
But in the face of this deadly bum rush, Asian honeybees have resorted to the scatological.
And a lot of the beekeepers hadn't noticed them, or if they had, they didn't know what they were. But there was a handful of beekeepers who had seen these spots.
Those spots, it turned out, were poop. The hive's decision to dip into the dung pile didn't come lightly, though. The alternative to covering their house in was annihilation of the colony in the face of an overwhelming giant hornet invasion.
And then at a certain point, the workers in the colony decide it's a lost cause and they'll abandon ship and everyone will leave. And that leaves the entire colony undefended. So at that point, the hornets can successfully, without any interference, break into the nest and occupy it. And when they take over a nest, what they do is ferry the bee larvae inside back to their own hornet larvae so that they can eat them.
One beekeeper told Madela and her colleagues that he had seen the honeybees collecting bits of water buffalo dung. He thought that might explain the spots. He thought the bees might be using the dung to keep the hornets away.
We confirmed that bees actually forage on dung, which is a surprise in itself.
Honeybees generally keep their nests clean and tidy. They're good at keeping diseases and pathogens out, two things that could be hiding in animal poop.
And the thought of them collecting feces in the field and intentionally bringing it back home was pretty stunning.
Whenever they detected a giant hornet nearby, but not other smaller hornets, the honeybees began to arrange bits of mammal or bird dung near the entrances to their hives. And the hornets themselves were less likely to land on a nest adorned with poop. If they did bother to land, they spent 94% less time attempting to break in. The study was published in the December 9 issue of the journal PLOS One. The researchers say this is the first time honeybees have ever been documented collecting non-plant matter. And because the bees are selective in what kind of poop they collect, and use it in a very specific way, they say it actually qualifies as tool use, the first known instance in wild bees. It isn't clear why or how the poop shield works, but Madela suspects that there must be some chemical inside the poop, presumably derived from the plants that the animals originally ate, that either actively repels the hornets or camouflages the scent of the bees' nests. American bees don't do this. Asian honeybees are a different species than the Western honeybees in Europe and North America.
I just can't even totally capture how much fun it really was to do this work. I didn't have a lot of personal experience with Asian bees, and so meeting them was kind of like meeting the crazy cousin of the bees you know really well. These bees are a lot smaller, but they're very, very fast and very reactive. And that's because of the kind of hornet pressure that they've evolved under. They have evolved to fly quite quickly in zigzagging patterns as they're approaching their nest so that they're very hard to catch.
Western honeybees did not evolve alongside hornets, as did their Asian cousins, which makes them especially susceptible to hornet attacks in places where giant hornets become introduced. If Madela and her team can figure out how poop keeps hornets away, it might help North American beekeepers help their bees to survive, if the so-called murder hornets decide they like it here. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1888. That was the day novelist Edward Bellamy published his futuristic Utopia novel, Looking Backward, 2000 to 1887. The protagonist, Julian West, wakes up in the year 2000 to find that industry has been nationalized and wealth, goods, and services have been equitably distributed. People work less, retire early, and enjoy greater leisure. Looking Backwards was so popular that by 1900, only Uncle Tom's Cabin and Ben-Hur had sold more copies. Bellamy's Utopia solved problems of capitalism through the development of a socialistic society. Bellamy denied he was a socialist and instead referred to his vision as nationalist. The novel sparked a political movement virtually overnight. Bellamites, as they were called, formed nationalist clubs across the country. They attempted to organize a people's party around these clubs, which soon dissolved into the populist movement of the 1890s. Looking backwards was a response to the Gilded Age world of monopolies and trusts, depressions, and often violent class convulsions. Bellamy was quick to indict the banks, the railroads, and the corrupt political system that served them. Sociologist Arthur Lippow argues in his book that while Bellamy may have expressed anti-capitalist sentiments, his future is one in which there is no democratic public life or political process. For Lippow, Bellamy's particular collectivist view is militaristic and bureaucratic, and does away with representative bodies of any kind. Socialist Party leader Eugene V. Debs credited his own political development in part to reading Looking Backwards. He noted that, regardless of whether Bellamy considered himself a socialist, his novel generated popularity and enthusiasm for socialist ideas, causes, and politics.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Donald J. Trump will go down in history as the first and hopefully only president to be impeached twice. On January 13th, at 4:22 in the afternoon, the votes in the House of Representatives passed the number necessary to impeach. The charge was incitement of insurrection. In the end, 232, including 10 Republicans, voted yes. Those 10 Republicans, by the way, who put country over party are Liz Cheney of Wyoming, Anthony Gonzalez of Ohio, Jamie Herrera Beutler of Washington, John Katko, New York, Adam Kinzinger, Illinois, Peter Major, Michigan, Dan Newhouse of Washington, Tom Rice of South Carolina, Fred Upton of Michigan, and David Valadao of California. Good for them. The attack on the Capitol left 5 people dead, including a Capitol police officer. Another of the officers that was on duty that day later committed suicide. And at least a dozen others were severely injured. We know of one who will definitely lose an eye because of the attacks on them by the rioters. Yet a number of Republicans called the charges politically motivated. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy did admit that Trump bears responsibility.
That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
But then he said Trump shouldn't be impeached with just a week left in his presidency. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi opened the debate Wednesday, pulling no punches.
And we know that the President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country. He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
Now that he's been impeached by the House again, the action moves to the Senate for a trial. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Wednesday notified Democrats that he would not summon senators back for an emergency session before January 19th. So Trump's impeachment trial will not start before Joe Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. But in a letter to his caucus, McConnell said that he had not made a final decision on whether he would vote to convict Trump. The New York Times reported that a Republican strategist said McConnell had told people he believed that Trump had committed impeachable offenses, and that McConnell considered the impeachment an opportunity for the Republican Party to distance itself from Trump. McConnell also reportedly told Republican donors over the weekend that he was finished with Donald Trump. He's not the only one. The FBI on Wednesday told police chiefs around the country to be on high alert for potential extremist violence ahead of the January 20th inauguration of Joe Biden. FBI Director Christopher Wray warned during a call with chiefs that extremists might target state capitals, federal buildings, homes of congressional members, and businesses. Federal authorities said last week's attack on the U.S. Capitol by Trump supporters would be a significant driver of violence for armed right-wing militia groups and racist extremists seeking to disrupt Biden's inauguration and trigger a race war. And who thought things couldn't get worse than 2020? So investigators looking into the breach have uncovered evidence, including weapons and tactics seen in surveillance video, that suggests that the breach was likely planned. Questions have also been raised about whether the rioters had insider help. At least one protest organizer said that he coordinated with 3 House Republicans. And there are allegations that those Republicans gave some of the rioters their own tour of the Capitol on January 5th, the day before the siege. Lots of questions swirling. I'm sure they're investigating. The New York Times is reporting that Donald Trump watched the impeachment proceedings on Wednesday on television from the White House and then had to be talked down from heading over to the House floor to defend himself. Oh, they should have let him. Banned from virtually all social media, the White House on Wednesday evening released a video of Trump sitting at his desk, reading a speech off a teleprompter in which he attempted to defend himself. Reports say he had to be talked into doing the video by Jared Kushner, who also warned him not to mention the impeachment, which he didn't. While he claimed to be against the violence and did urge peaceful protests going forward, at no point in that video did Donald Trump disavow his nonstop lies about election fraud or his own incendiary language. And there was no admission that President-elect Joe Biden won the 2020 election fair and square. In fact, there was no mention of Joe Biden at all. Speaking of Biden, the president-elect is expected to release his coronavirus stimulus plan on Thursday. It'll reportedly include several priorities sought by Democrats, including boosting the direct relief payments beyond $600, extending increased unemployment insurance, and more. And finally, Michigan prosecutors on Wednesday charged former Governor Rick Snyder with 2 counts of willful neglect of duty in connection with the Flint drinking water crisis. Snyder, Republican, appointed the emergency manager who decided in 2014 to save money by making the Flint River the city's water source. The city and state, however, failed to properly treat the water with corrosion controls, and lead leaked into the city's drinking water. Great that he's being held accountable, but the charge is only a misdemeanor?
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 60. How dare they? Looks like partly cloudy this afternoon, and highs will be, like I said, near 60. Winds light and variable, partly cloudy overnight, lows in the low 40s. Winds remaining light and variable with increasing chances of rain, with showers in the morning tomorrow, highs in the mid-50s. Then partly cloudy in the afternoon, and winds will be light and variable, and it looks like we're getting over 1/10 of an inch of rain. Confirmed cases of coronavirus here in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stand at 682 with 82 deceased. Oh, I should add that I've been whining that we need snow, and it looks like we're going to get cold enough with enough precipitation to freeze in the air towards the middle of next week. So we'll look forward to that. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index for the region is rated good at 22 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low, or the daytime UV is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.38 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile. I failed to mention we are under a heavy fog advisory currently. We'll be lifting about 11 o'clock this morning local time. Relative humidity is at 91%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 40 degrees with a drizzle. Paris is 52 and cloudy. Rome is 57 and fair. Kyiv is 28 degrees with light snow. Kabul is 38 with its winter smoke. Hong Kong is 52 and clear. Tokyo is 43 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 71 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Kim Tong-Wong of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. South Korea's Supreme Court upheld a 20-year prison term today for former President Park Geun-hye over bribery and other crimes as it ended a historic corruption case that marked a striking fall from grace for the country's first female leader and conservative icon. The ruling means Park, who was ousted from office and arrested in 2017, could potentially serve a combined 22 years behind bars following a separate conviction for illegally meddling in her party's candidate nominations ahead of parliamentary elections in 2016. But the finalizing of her prison term also makes her eligible for a special presidential pardon, a looming possibility as the country's deeply split electorate approaches the next presidential election in March of 2022. President Moon Jae-in, a liberal who won the presidential by-election following Park's removal, has yet to directly address the possibility of freeing his predecessor.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Vladimir Isachenkov of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Top Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny says he plans to go home to Russia next weekend, despite the authorities' threats to put him once again behind bars. Navalny has been convalescing in Germany from an August poisoning with a nerve agent that he has blamed on the Kremlin, and I should add quite a few, about a dozen other countries as well. And he has charged that Russian President Vladimir Putin was now trying to deter him from coming home with new legal motions. The Kremlin, of course, has repeatedly denied any role in Navalny's poisoning. He said he will fly home from Germany on Sunday. German government spokeswoman Ulrich Drema said Berlin has taken note of reports of Navalny's plans, but did not answer a question about the possible risk that he faces. Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.